This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's up, Detroit sports fans? Welcome to the Fan Reporter Show, made by fans for fans, powered by the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm Nick, and with me is Anders going to give us this week's topics.
Well, just when we thought Troy Weaver was done this offseason, he goes and makes a trade. We're going to talk about it. I think it's going to try to get me excited about the Lions this season. It's a Fan Report.
Well, I figure we should probably just start with the Pistons, get them out of the way.
Yep.
And then we can move on over and use the rest of the episode to talk about the Lions and how I can convince you to watch them.
Well, I'll be watching them. I'm just not too excited about it.
I'll give you a reason to. I don't know. I guess I'll give you a reason to be excited. I'll do my best. It's a tall order. It is a tall order.
It was a challenge that's been issued.
It's a tough challenge.
We'll see your lawyer abilities today.
I'm gonna have to bring my A game with this one, but
but to start, a few days ago, Aiden Wojnarowski first to report that the Brooklyn Nets traded center DeAndre Jordan, along with 4 second-round picks and $5.8 million to Detroit for Jahlil Okafor and Sekou Doumbouya. This effectively clears up the additional roster spot that we needed to retain Diallo, as well as gives us an additional roster opening because we followed that up by buying out DeAndre Jordan's contract. Nick, what are your thoughts on this trade and the implications going forward?
My immediate thought on the trade was, I understand we needed to get rid of somebody on the roster because we were over the roster limits, but we all speculated it was going to be Jahlil Okafor anyways. Mm-hmm. So my immediate reactions were, I was a little bit confused and a little bit disappointed with the fact that we were giving up on a 20-year-old project that we drafted in the first round, high in the lottery just a couple of years ago. I know it wasn't Troy Weaver's pick, but it was still a guy who has a very high upside, has shown an ability from time to time in this league that he can play, but for the most part is just an entirely raw prospect. And again, he is only 20 years old. So for us to give up on that for essentially nothing but cap space, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. I didn't really like it that much. And I guess sitting here now, I still don't necessarily like it. But at the same time, it was obvious Troy Weaver and Dwayne Casey were not fans of Sekou Doumbouya. They weren't fans of his development or lack thereof. They weren't able to really find a role in this offense that worked for him, or in this team that worked for him. And that was glaringly obvious in the previous 2 years because he just never got the playing time unless it was out of literal necessity because we had nobody else. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, that does make me wonder if there was ever going to be an opportunity for Sekou Doumbouya in this Detroit Pistons roster. And it's pretty obvious the answer was no. So with that being said, yeah, it does help that we freed up some cap space. And like you mentioned, saved us $6 million this year with the contracts of Sekou and Jahlil Okafor. And from what I can tell, the cap hit that we're going to take on from DeAndre Jordan's buyout is not as severe as it could have been.
Yeah, James Edwards did come out today and say that we're not stretching it, so thank God for that. So it is going to just be this year and next year, the cap hit, and then
how much is the cap hit going to be for next year? Because that next year, so my plan for the Detroit Pistons, because it matters so much, because my opinion matters so much, was in this next offseason was for the Pistons to be big-time buyers in free agency. And I mean going after a bona fide star in free agency because it looks like a good class to essentially complete this roster and then begin winning at that point. And so I'm curious to see how much do they have a dollar figure for next offseason, what this it's going to be?
So This is per James Edwards. He says the Pistons will not be stretching DeAndre Jordan's contract per sources. The team will be paying him roughly $7.9 million. He gave back $4 million this year and next. Detroit is lined up to have a good amount of cap space both in 2022 and 2023, with the latter being more decorated. By more decorated, isn't there be more talent in the free agency pool in 2023? So it doesn't sound like, again, I'm not an expert in terms, because I know we received quite a bit of cash from Brooklyn. I'm not an expert into how that works into your cap. It doesn't sound like the cash serves to offset the cap hit, because
I don't believe it ever really does. I think it's just a sweetener in the buyout.
Yeah.
Is, all right, you don't have to pay as much of the buyout amount because we're going to give you some of that cash to buy them out.
Yeah.
I don't think it affects your cap. So it sounds like we're playing with $8 million less this next offseason than we were prior.
Yeah, this year it's basically a wash because we saved like $6 million. Like we shipped out $6 million with Sekou and Jao Okafor. So this year it's like almost a wash.
Right. We
next
just
year,
take out an extra almost $2 million.
Yeah. So you have next year the $7 million cap hit next year. It looks like for 2022.
So it sounds to me like they are a year behind in from my plan. Like they're pushing back my plan by a year to be big time buyers in the 2023 offseason as opposed to 2022.
Yeah, 2022, like your big target would have been like for a max contract at least, probably been like a Zach LaVine, which I think Zach
wouldn't
LaVine's nice
hate
fit on
that
this
at
team.
all. Just saying, just saying, I wouldn't hate that. That would be a good one. But so give me some ideas. So throw some of the names out for the free agent class for next year and the year following on what we could be looking at, and basically try to sell me a little bit. And you don't have to too much because again, I've come to terms with it. Sekou was never going to be in the future of this franchise at this point, anyways. But try to sell me on the fact that this is a good thing for the Detroit Pistons.
Well, yeah. Well, let me start by saying, as far as Sekou is concerned, I was rooting for the guy, but I'll tell you right now, at least in my opinion, if he didn't show a massive turnaround this year, I don't think there was any way he was getting re-signed. He would need to really turn things around. And the summer league showed no indication, at least to me, that he was going to be any different this year than he was last year. It showed I didn't see any improvement at all. You saw those same bursts of energy that we saw early last year in the preseason, where he had those bursts of high energy play, and then he just disappear for stretches. But I get it that at the end of the season, he's still only going to be 21, so you could still argue to re-sign him as a 21-year-old, probably still going to come cheap. But yeah, I think that the way I view it, at least, I think Troy Weaver saw the writing on the wall with Sekou. He just didn't. I just don't think he saw an avenue at this point where he was going to be good enough to re-sign at the end of the season. And then Ja, we already wrote him off. Ja was
the cut guy because we were over the roster spot.
Yeah.
Or over the roster limitations. But in terms of what the Pistons could be looking at grabbing in free agency, what are we kind of looking at here?
So in terms of 2022, your biggest name is like a Zach LaVine. Chicago does have the bird rights to him,
which I'd expect him to use on him. But who are some other names out there?
You have guys like Thaddeus Young, Aaron Gordon, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. I think do both expire in that year.
You're not getting them next.
Yep.
And Kyrie doesn't really make sense with this roster. James Harden, as good of a player as he is, he wouldn't fit with this team either. With Cade Cunningham being here. Russell Westbrook, you said, same situation, wouldn't really fit here.
If the Pelicans don't pick up the team option on Zion, you could have.
I mean, Zion would be lovely. I just don't expect them not to pick up the team option on Zion.
If Minnesota doesn't pick up the team option on Anthony Edwards.
That would also be ridiculous.
If Charlotte doesn't pick up their team option on LaMelo,
that would also be ridiculous.
It's not a very attractive.
So this free agent class just really isn't that great
for 2022. Yeah, it's not looking
okay. So moving on to 2023, great. Then what are we looking at? Because there's probably a good. Let's in all reality, Zach LaVine probably is going to have a bird rights situation. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Bulls use their bird rights to keep him. Aaron Gordon does not excite me whatsoever. We saw that he's really not as much of a plus player on a good basketball team in Denver as we thought he could be.
Yep.
Thaddeus Young does also not really excite me. He's not that star caliber type player that would really put this team over the top. He's
a nice piece.
Nice. He's a very good role player, is what he is. But we need something a little bit more than that to really complete this roster.
All right. So again, not saying that these people are actually going to be available because they could just very well re-sign with their team. But looking at 2023, some of the UFAs, Bradley Beal is an unrestricted free agent in 2023. Chris Middleton has a player option for 2023.
Boy, would that be fun to have him come back and be the guy to complete the roster.
Again, you have Kyrie and James Harden, bird rights on UFAs in 2023 with bird rights for the Nets. Kristaps has a player option for 2023. Yeah. You got Jokic, UFA, D'Angelo Russell, UFA, Draymond, UFA, Vucevic, UFA, Harrison Barnes, UFA, Fred VanVleet has a player option, Brogdon's a UFA.
So obviously, of the names that are out there, the 2023 class is a lot better. Now, I do expect a lot of those guys to get re-signed. I expect to see guys like Barnes and Draymond and and Chris Middleton. I even expect to be re-signed as well because they will still be competing. But guys like you mentioned, Bradley Beal, he's not on a competing team. He will probably test free agency. That would probably be an interesting one to bring in.
Yeah.
You'd have a short backcourt, but Cade kind of makes up for that lack of size there anyways, so you really don't at that point.
Yep. Another one that I find really interesting that I think you do have a solid shot at is Karis LeVert, UFA that year as well.
Karis LeVert would be very interesting as well. I mean, there's a lot of names out there that could complete this roster. Now, I do want the Pistons to be going after somebody a little bit better than a Karis LeVert. I do see the Pistons ending up having to settle for a guy like Karis LeVert.
We may have the money for both a Bradley Beal and a Karis LeVert because currently we only have two people getting paid more than $10 million on this roster. Right. So,
well, how many people do we have to give contracts to until by then? How many players are we going to have to re-sign if we actually want to?
Jeremy Grant is a UFA that season.
So we'll need to re-sign him. Okay.
Do you want to re-sign him?
Yes, I do. I think he is a part of the future of this franchise. I think he's going to be some of the veteran leadership on this roster. And I would, in all reality, I would consider him to be a part, if I wanted to build a real solid three-man game, he would be a part of that three-headed dragon on this roster. And then you'd have a two-headed baby dragon with guys like Isaiah Stewart and Sadiq Bey.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would look to re-sign Jeremy Grant, who is probably, I would argue, if his play continues the way it has been, he'd be a max contract candidate. So that would be something that would clog up some cap space.
Now, this is just me, shits and giggles. What if you had a reversal situation? Because Christian Wood is also UFA that season. What if you let Jeremy walk and got Christian Wood on a cheaper deal than what you would have gotten Jeremy Grant for? Would you do that?
I'm going to say no. I like Christian Wood a lot, but I think the type of player that Jeremy Grant is fits a little bit more into Dwayne Casey's system than one like Christian Wood. I think it would fit this roster a little bit. Plus, he'd already have you can't buy chemistry. And Jeremy Grant already has chemistry with a lot of the youth on this team, and he would continue to build it over the next 2 seasons. So it'd be tough to replace that.
Yeah.
And as a respected veteran leader on this roster, and I know he's young still, but as a respected veteran leader on this roster, it hurts to lose something like that. So, and I don't think Christian Wood, as good of a player as he is, would be able to come in and just immediately replace that. So I would rather pay extra to keep Jeremy Grant and the type of player that he is that has already developed a solid fit with this rotation in this roster than get a little bit of a cheaper deal to bring in Christian Wood. I also consider Christian Wood to be more of a big man style of player than Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant is much more of a wing style player to me, and I think that's what Dwayne Casey wants in that kind of 3-4 swing player type of guy.
I agree. I prefer Jeremy to Christian Wood. Now, if I'm going to have to pay Jeremy Grant a max deal and then still try to get our max bet on this roster, I might hesitate because then I might fear will I be able to retain Cade in a couple years.
I mean, you'd probably have bird rights on him.
Yeah.
So you would be able to no matter what. 2, you see teams paying insane deals to bring in guys and keep guys anyways. So, I mean, I think it's entirely possible the Pistons do keep Cade. Now, that could come at the expense of a guy like Sadiq Bey or Isaiah Stewart, but it just depends on what you want your future to be with this franchise. You know, and I'm talking your long-term future, like way down the road, 7-8 years down the road. So it just depends on who you really want to be a part of that.
Can I propose a worst-case scenario?
Yes.
You whiff on all your targets, and then you end up shelling out money to 2 unrestricted free agents by the name of Reggie Jackson and KCP in 2023.
If that were to happen, I'd riot. Because why the hell would you ever do that? Like, the Pistons fans don't want either of those guys here.
I just wanted to upset you a little bit.
It worked. It worked. I honestly think people would riot. LCA may get burned down.
But going back to the trade, though, looking at what we got, is it just me or looking at the fact that they traded us 4 future second-round picks? I feel like that screams of Troy Weaver was really trying to pry a first out of them. And they just kept upping the ante of second-round picks rather than trading him first.
I mean, it definitely sounds like he was trying to get a first out of it. But he probably knew he was never going to, so he's going to milk as much draft compensation as possible. That conversation probably went, all right, we'll take DeAndre Jordan's contract from you for a little bit of a sweetener, but I want a first-round pick. And they said, you ain't getting a first-round pick. Try again. And that they were just adamant about that. So he just kept throwing out second-round pick after second-round pick after second-round pick. He probably started with like 5 or 6, and then he got talked down to 4.
All right, 4 plus $6 million.
Yeah, that's probably what it went down to, and he was like, all right, we'll do it. So I bet you he probably started at a first-round pick, but it was probably shot down right away because in all reality, what do they get in return? A 20-year-old project who hasn't panned out so far, but does have a lot of upside, and a roster cut candidate. A guy you were already going to be getting rid of anyways.
But they also do save $47 million in salary and tax.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Like you took a lot of money. You allowed them to have a lot more flexibility there.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's a good trade in the grand scheme of things. I do know a lot of people, or some people, are upset about the fact that we did give up on Sekou Doumbouya. Mm-hmm. They're excited, they were excited to see what he could bring to this team in the future. Mm-hmm. And I understand that. And I mentioned that. But it has become increasingly unlikely that Sekou's timeline in terms of when he was going to be good at basketball was not fitting with what the Pistons want, with the Pistons timeline at this point. Because we don't know when or even if he is going to be good at basketball.
That was going to be my next question. I want you to call your shot. Are we going to be 5 years down the road? Are we going to be looking at Sekou as another Chris Middleton, Spencer Dinwiddie, Aaron Aflalo, another second-round pick the Pistons gave up, in this case, first-round pick the Pistons gave up on too early?
I'll say this. I think Sekou Doumbouya will be an NBA player for quite some time. I think if he's given the opportunity, and it's because we've seen what he can do. Mm-hmm. It just has only happened in very short spurts, and it's wildly inconsistent. Yep. But I think with the right coaching and given the time and opportunity, I think he'll become a little bit more consistent with it. Now, I'm not saying the dude's going to be a star. I'm not saying he's going to become an all-star at any point in his career, but I do think you will see him contributing productive minutes for a good team at some point in his career. Mm-hmm. So I'm not quite going to say that we've got a Chris Middleton situation here, but we may have an Aaron Aflalo situation where he's a productive contributing player on a good basketball team. Which, in all reality, considering where he was drafted, That's still a pretty big disappointment in what his upside really was.
Yeah.
Or is.
That was a really weak draft, though.
It was. It was not a good draft in any way.
I mean, you look at the names drafted after Saku, it's not all that inspiring. So,
No.
All right. So, but final verdict, though, not a huge fan of the trade, is what you're saying?
No, I mean,
for me, I'm going to reserve judgment until I see what we do with that extra roster spot.
that's. I'll call it an incomplete. Also, face value. If we do nothing with the money, which I know that's not even a possibility because they have to, sign people.
Yep.
But face value, if we do nothing with the money, I don't love it. Mm-hmm. But knowing what the end game is here, it makes sense, and that's why I'm willing to wait and see.
Yep. Yeah, because right now you could definitely make the argument that we probably just been better if we're not going to use a roster spot on anything meaningful. That we would have been better off just cutting Ja and calling it a day,
right?
And at least giving Sekou that one more year. But because it's not the 4 second-round picks or all that. Like we had the Nets second-round pick in 2022,
so one of the last picks in the draft.
Yep, and then we have also the Nets second-round pick in 2027. We have the 2024 second via the Wizards, and then the 2025 second via the Warriors.
Troy Weaver seriously loves the second-round picks. I don't know if there's ever been an NBA GM who has acquired more second-round picks in his short tenure with a team than Troy Weaver has.
Hey, there's a legitimate chance he may have hit 2 years in a row on a second-round pick if Saban Lee keeps it up and Luka Garza looks.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I think he's got an eye for talent. Don't get me wrong at all. So I agree with you there. But the other thing is it does give the Pistons a little bit of an opportunity to maybe package some second round picks to move up in the draft if he sees the right opportunity. We've seen him do it a couple times in not this past draft, but the year before. And I bet you he probably tried this past year, but he either didn't find a spot he liked or he didn't have enough.
What was the trade where we trade away 3 or 4 second round picks?
Wasn't that 2 years ago when we moved up to 15?
I think this was this past season.
Oh, I don't know.
Wasn't it when we got Diallo? Is that what it was?
It might have been. I think you might be right there.
He was just replenishing the arsenal. Also.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. But yeah, I'm on the same boat as you. It's an incomplete at this point because this was clearly a trade made with future things in mind. So we'll see what this opens up for us.
Right. Let's pivot on over to the Lions here. This week is obviously week 1. It's time. The wait is finally over. Lions season officially begins. And before I get into trying to sell you on reasons to be excited about the Lions, I wanted to kind of do a little pregame talk about this upcoming weekend.
Okay.
Going up against San Francisco 49ers. Now, it is a little bit tough to do some pregame talk because we have no idea who the San Francisco 49ers quarterback is going to be. Trey Lance is considered questionable for this upcoming weekend. Do you think he was going to be the starting quarterback if he was healthy?
Coming from someone who actually drafted him in the 13th round of my fantasy draft last night, I am not expecting him to start at least the first handful of games of the season.
I would probably say at least through week 4 or 5, he wasn't. Weeks 4 to 6, I would say he wasn't going to be the starting quarterback. Now, that timeline could be moved up. We've seen that. That timeline could also be pushed back if Jimmy G is actually playing really well. I think the added aspect of the injury of him is going to push it back even further. So you may not see him until week 8 now because now he's not able to get as many reps in practice or as intensive work in practice. So there's that added aspect as well. So I fully expect to see Jimmy Garoppolo under center in week 1. Does that change your outlook on how the Lions can fare this weekend?
No, I liked Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't exactly the most aggressive downfield quarterback in what we've seen from him, but I still don't think he's a quarterback that's going to negatively affect his team. And I think the Niners defense is one of the best in the league. I do think they have receiving weapons. I like Raheem Mostert. I don't think we win this no matter who starts a quarterback.
No, and I agree with you 100%. I think San Francisco is the better team. I think they dealt with so many injuries last year and still managed to compete in a lot of games last year, and going in almost as healthy as they're going to be. Obviously, they've got some guys banged up. Brandon Ayuk is considered questionable. Mo Hurst and Devontae Harris also questionable. Mo Hurst and Devontae Harris are on IR, so they're out for a while. But Brandon Ayuk being questionable, and he is kind of their top weapon offensively.
Well, Kittle.
Besides Kittle. So that is a big blow, but it's not like they don't have some other guys that can still burn the Lions. And one thing that we have seen the Lions struggle with for many seasons now is the ability to cover the elite tight ends. I fully expect George Kittle to have an absolute field day on Sunday. And I think Raheem Mostert will have an absolute field day on Sunday. I think that those are the two weak points in this Lions defense, covering the tight end and stopping the run. And I don't think that's going to be any different this weekend. I think those two guys will be able to have their way, and the San Francisco will be able to put up, I can't say a boatload of points because I still don't think the San Francisco offense is that great, but I think they will be able to put up an above average for them amount of points against this Lions defense.
Yeah.
And offensively speaking for the Lions, I think they're going to struggle against the San Francisco defense. Now, it is encouraging that they got all their guys back offensively. They've got DeAndre Swift back. They've got TJ Hawkinson out there. Jared Goff's ready to go. I mean, they've got their arsenal. So it's a good sign there. I do think the Lions offense probably will try to start quickly and start red hot, and DeAndre Swift's going to want to get going, and it's going to be encouraging. But I think San Francisco is a team that's really good at making adjustments, and they'll probably be able to shut the Lions down and find the holes in that offense any way they can, and they'll exploit them. Now, I am curious to see how their defense no longer having Robert Saleh is going to make an impact. That's been one big question mark with San Francisco this year, is how will losing their DC affect them? And I
agree.
think
That's the most interesting part of this game to me.
Oh, absolutely. And that's probably the biggest storyline for San Francisco in the first quarter of their season, is how will they fare without their DC that the defense very obviously played up for, where they were very excited and hyped to play for a guy like Robert Saleh. And now that he's no longer there, is the next guy going to be able to replicate that type of energy?
Yeah. I mean, I give a lot of credit to Robert Saleh for what he did last year with so many players in defensive end going down and them still being a consistently great defensive team despite that.
He's got a hell of a tall order in New York this year.
Yeah. Yes, he does.
The Jets are a bad football team.
But in terms of right now, at least with a fully healthy roster, I'd expect the defense to start off hot. I don't expect the defense overall to be as good as it was last year, because I do think Robert Saleh is a big factor in that. But they do have the personnel to at least start off strong.
Right. And excuse me, I completely agree with you there. I think that this defense is every team is all fired up and ready for week one. So you may not start to see the full impact of not having Robert Saleh for a couple of weeks, because these guys are still all gassed up and going to be playing hard because football's back and they want to hit somebody.
Football.
So we may not get to see the lack of having Robert Saleh on the sideline make as much of an impact this week, but you may still see some situations where it does. But I wanted to ask you, who is going to be the impact guy on the offense for the Lions? If there is a path for the Lions to win this football game, who needs to show up for them?
Well, who do I think it's going to be? I think it's going to be Hawk. Who does it need to be? It needs to be DeAndre Swift. Reason being, you could also argue Jared Goff, but I do think if DeAndre Swift can't get it going and that run game stalls, that Niners defense is too good for you to not be able to keep them on their heels. If your offense gets one-dimensional, you're screwed.
Well, not just that. I'll take it even a step further. Jared Goff just isn't good enough of a quarterback, and you don't have solid enough weapons in the passing game to really make a difference if you are one-dimensional. So you need DeAndre Swift to really set the tone for this offense if you want the passing game to work at all.
Yeah.
Because their defense, both on the ground and through the air, is very effective. So if you aren't able to keep them off balance and make play action an effective game plan, then you won't be able to move the ball against the San Francisco 49ers defense. And that's just a fact. They are a good defense, and you're not going to move the ball by being one-dimensional against them, especially when you don't have Aaron Rodgers or somebody like that under center.
And following that point, I think it's going to be a key factor in every game for the Lions this season is can DeAndre Swift get the run game going?
100% agree. I think he's going to be kind of a catalyst for this offense. If he's having a bad game or the offensive line's not able to spring him some holes so that he can run through them, you're probably going to see a slow day at the office for the offensive for the offensive game playing in the Detroit Lions. Because I really don't expect to see Jared Goff come out throwing the ball 45, 50 times, putting up almost 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like that I don't see that ever in the Lions' future this season.
Let's talk spread. Niners are favored by 7.5.
That is a lot of points in the NFL.
How do you take it?
Lot of points in the NFL.
Do you have the nuts to bet on Detroit Lions in week 1?
I don't think I do.
Me neither.
I think I would probably take. I see the hook, the extra point going from 6.5 to get the 7-point swing. Like that is where I'm a little bit hung up. Is having that winning by more than a touchdown. That's where I'm a little bit hung up on it. But I do see Lions losing this game by like 10 plus points. I don't see them really being able to move the ball very much and scoring a lot against this 49ers defense. And I don't really see the Lions defense being able to shut them down equally. So I think the 49ers should be able to win this possibly by 10 to 14 points. So I'll take the Niners with the spread.
And the over-under is set at 45. And
I think that's way too high.
I'm kind of tempted to take the under, which would basically imply Lions are barely going to score, if at all.
Right, and that's kind of what my mentality is on this game. I don't really see the Lions scoring a ton of points here. I don't really see the Niners putting up 35, but I don't see the Lions really scoring more than like 17. Like it's.
I was going to say I can see like a 28-7.
Right, that's the type of game I can definitely see happening. I don't know about 28, maybe like 24-7. Like I can totally see that.
But yeah, so I think we're both on the same page in terms of this game. So with that being said, why should I be excited going into this? What should draw me to the TV on Sunday, other than fantasy implications? Not that I have any of these guys in fantasy. I kind of avoid.
You don't have a single Lion on your team this year, right?
Nope. I have two teams so far, drafting a third tonight, and I don't plan on having a single line on any of them.
So I'm going to have to put on my, the best court suit that I got. It's put on my A-game lawyer speak here to try to convince you on this. Why should you be excited about the Lions this season? Well, I'm going to start it off by saying one of the biggest reasons to watch the Lions this year is you have an entirely fresh and new regime. That immediately should already instill some excitement because, well, we've heard Dan Campbell speak. We know he's a fiery guy. We know he seems to be a motivator, and players probably want to play for a guy like that. And with that being said, coaches like that tend to just put out a more exciting product on the football field. You see the hits are harder. The plays are bigger.
Do you expect him to be as animated on the sidelines as Jim Schwartz was?
I do. I do expect to see him be quite animated on the sideline, and I want to see him. I want to see him be in the middle of the pregame, in the middle of the crowd of players, jumping around, firing them up, pushing some guys, slapping some guys in the helmet, getting them.
So be Rashid in the center of the huddle.
Yes, yes. I mean that's not really a reason to watch the team, but it having a new regime in terms of the front office as well as the coaching staff is a reason, and you're seeing what is going to be the future of the Lions here. And with the past the way it's gone, you're allowed to have excitement for the future of this franchise. And there are a few guys on this roster that you can watch for. We saw a few of them in training camp in the preseason show some ability to play the game at a high level. Derek Barnes is a guy that I seriously think you really should be watching out for this year. I think he showed a lot when he was able to play in the preseason. That's a guy you can look to be a potential future of this franchise. There's a lot, and then we also got to bring up Aleem McNeil, another guy, someone you can watch on that defense. There are reasons to watch this team, and a lot of it has to do with the youth. And there's reason to be excited there. TJ Hawkinson could cement himself as one of the top 5, if not higher tight ends in this league this year. You maybe could see the potential for Jared Goff to bring back his Pro Bowl type performances. He's going to have the opportunity. You have a chance to look at an offensive line that could be a potential top 5 offensive line for years to come. You have a running back that could really put himself in the conversation for one of the best, I'm losing the word, but dual threat running backs in this league in terms of being through the ground and through the air. Like, DeAndre Swift has a chance to really put himself in that conversation.
I think you bring up a good point in terms of even like just the offensive line. That's, in my opinion at least, that's the foundation of what this team is going to be.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Offensive lines are not exciting to watch, and neither are defensive lines. But
like what it is in terms of, I'm going to be watching this right now and almost nervous about it, because if this looks bad, I feel like it already sets our team back a couple of years.
Like, and it very well could. Like you're not wrong, but I do. You got to have at least a little bit of confidence in what they have in place here. Frank Ragnow is an All-Pro candidate player from year in, year out now. Taylor Decker has absolutely earned the money he's been given. Jonah Jackson last year looked like a very solid left guard. On the right side, Penei Sewell, I know he didn't look great in the preseason, but coming into the draft, he was the stud tackle to go after. So there is a lot to be excited about with the offensive line, the personnel that's put together. And I know they're not exciting to watch, but at the same time, you could be starting to see the foundation of what the future of this franchise is going to be. And that is guys like Penei Sewell, Frank Ragnow, DeAndre Swift, and on the defense, Derek Barnes. If Jeff Okudah, really makes a big improvement, offensively, TJ Hawkinson as well. I mean, there's a lot of youth out there that are exciting, that are pieces to be excited about watching. And that's really kind of the biggest reason, because I'm not expecting this team to win a lot of games, but I am excited to watch certain groups and certain players perform. And I mean, even some of the smaller names that we're not going to get to see a ton of. Guys like Jamar Jefferson, a 7th round pick. He's somebody who could come in and make an impact. Although, is he on the active roster, or did they put him on the practice squad? I think he's on the active roster. No?
I know they put Craig Reynolds on the practice squad.
Right.
I don't know what they ended up doing, Jamar Jefferson.
Let me look at the line.
I was very happy to see Craig Reynolds.
Oh, I was very glad to see them keep Craig Reynolds around. Very excited to see that. Jamar Jefferson is on the roster, yes. So, but I do think that there are a lot. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown, another name to watch out for. I think there's a lot of youth that can be excited about watching on this roster to give you a reason to watch.
I'm going to be honest with you, in terms of the offense, outside of seeing how well the offensive line holds up, that's number one thing I'm going to be watching is the wide receivers. I want to see who. It was the same thing I was watching for in the preseason. Didn't really get to see much, but I want to see who emerges out of that wide receiver group.
I think you could see guys like Quintez Cephas make a big impact. I think you could see Amon-Ra St. Brown make a big impact. I mean, there's a few other names out there. Khalif Raymond, Tom Kennedy, all of these guys are going to get opportunities. And I think you're going to see a lot of guys being switched in and out because they don't have an obvious 1-2 punch there.
Yeah, and we opened up a couple spots in the wide receiver core. We cut Geronimo Allison and what's his face? Rashad Perriman. Yeah, so we opened up room for some of these younger guys to show out. Absolutely.
And that right there is a reason to be excited. It tells you that they've got faith in the youth on this roster. So the biggest reason to watch in my eyes is you are going to get to see a lot of what could be the future of this franchise. And you're going to get to see it a lot throughout this season.
Well, that's the hope, at least.
Right. Well, you're going to get the opportunity to watch the potential.
Yeah.
And see if there's anything, if we do have anything. Now, this excitement could dwindle through the year if things go poorly. If Jeff Okudah can't play, obviously.
Certainly gave me no confidence in the preseason.
No, and he didn't last year either. But, I mean, the talent's obviously there. He's just got to bring it out.
Yeah.
So, but if you see him start to play effective football, if you see guys like Ifeatu Melifonwu play effective football, and Amani Aruarie play effective football, and the young guys coming out, could you imagine seeing a situation where Romeo Okwara and Julian Okwara lining up opposite each other and going after a quarterback and
that'd be fun.
mix and hitting at the same time and sandwiching the quarterback. Like that right there.
No, I want one of them to
hell.
hit the quarterback into the other one. That's what I want.
And then they just blow them up and the ball goes flying.
Yeah, kind of like a pinball, like a pinball thing, you know?
Yep. And the ball, and then they just blow up the quarterback. Ball goes flying for a scoop and score. I'd love it. You know, am I wrong for kind of wanting to see at least once this year a big boy touchdown with a Lee McNeil just so I can watch him dance? Like I have no idea if the dude can dance at all.
Why would you be wrong for it?
True.
Big boy touchdowns are some of the most fun things in football.
I know. I really want to see a Lee McNeil scoop and score and have a blast with it. Like
I'll never forget the Sean Rogers big boy touchdown back in 07
God.
Against the Broncos.
Dude runs 10 yards and needs an oxygen mask.
Yeah. I'd never seen him run before. It was like my first and only time I ever saw him run.
But you really could be seeing the future of this franchise. I know quarterback isn't a position that we're probably seeing the future of, but if Jared Goff does have a really good season, maybe we are.
I'll be dead honest with you. That's the main detractor of my excitement right now. It's the main thing hindering my excitement is I'm watching a quarterback who I hate to watch. I hated watching him in LA. And now I have to watch him on my football team.
I know. He is a boring quarterback. He throws a lot of picks. There's no doubt about that. And I expect this season to be a little bit frustrating when it comes to him. But if he's able to recapture some of that magic that he had when he went to the Super Bowl, when he was a Pro Bowl quarterback, maybe we see something happen there. Maybe we see a guy who could be the future quarterback of this franchise. And that is something to really watch on this team. I'm not saying be excited about it.
Watch us get a bunch of messages. Nick's drinking the Kool-Aid.
I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't think Jared Goff is the quarterback of the future on this team. I fully expect us to be picking very high next offseason and taking a quarterback, whether it be Sam Howell or not.
It'll be Sam Howell. Just wish it. Just put those thoughts into the universe.
I don't know if Sam Howell's a guy. Like I'll be honest with you. After watching him play the other day, I don't know about that. But there's not a ton to be excited about with this team. But there are some things to give you a reason to watch. And a lot of it has to do with the youth and the coaching on the sideline. You're watching the beginning of the future for this franchise. And as a Lions fan, that alone is a reason to watch.
You're watching a birth.
You pretty much are, because this is the birth of the next 3 to 4 years of this franchise. Because you probably are tied to both Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell for at least that amount of time. So it's exciting and refreshing. And here's one of my number one reasons to be excited about it is we don't have to watch a Matt Patricia coached football team any longer. And that right there should get you excited. That
was good. That was Hey. Ooh, that sent chills. That was I don't feel bad for Giovanni Tavai that now he has to go back play for Matt Patricia again.
No, I don't feel bad for him. And I think he's probably happy about it because that was the only chance that he had to get another job in this league, in my mind. As a practice squad member of the New England Patriots with Matt Patricia. Because that's what he is.
Yeah. Damn. I mean, you're not wrong. By the way, just for shits and gigs, I pulled up a 2022 mock draft from USA Today, Draft Wire of USA Today. They have the Texans getting a 1 overall pick, which I don't disagree with. I think the Texans are going to be god-awful.
As long as Deshaun Watson does not see the football field this year, yes.
Well, he's not playing this week, at least.
I know. I'm just saying, as long as he doesn't see the football field this year for the Texans, yes, they will be a terrible team and probably get the number 1 pick.
Spencer Rattler is who they have going there.
Okay.
And they have us taking Kayvon Thibodeau out of Oregon, edge rusher, who they say is the best player in the draft.
I mean, yes, he probably is the best player in the draft, but does that upset you that we didn't get a quarterback there?
They don't have another quarterback going until Sam Howell, which is, I just had it up, down at number 14.
Wow. I'm kind of shocked by that, and especially considering that I expect that to change drastically, considering the way that this league works and how much importance they place on the quarterback position in the draft, I fully expect to see at least 2 quarterbacks taken in the top 10. But
can the argument be made that this is just going to be a really weak quarterback class?
I don't think it's any weaker than last year's. No, I think that there's a lot of quarterbacks in this. I mean, because think about it.
You do always see quarterbacks emerge throughout the season.
Exactly. Well, not just that, but I think as we get closer to draft time, you'll start to see the quarterbacks come up in this draft and on the draft boards, because we'll start to see teams. Oh, we really need a quarterback. Oh, they need to start looking for the future or something along those lines. Like Green Bay should be looking for a quarterback of the future. We don't know how long Aaron Rodgers is going to be there.
Well, they got Jordan Love.
Green Bay needs to be looking for a quarterback of the future. But I'd be shocked if we didn't get at least 2 quarterbacks in the top 10 of this draft. Do I think that this draft is as good as last year's? Probably not in terms of the quarterback position. I think you see probably 2 or 3 franchise QBs come out of last year's draft. But I do still think that there is talent at the QB position that can play for a long time in this league. I don't think this is going to be like a Christian Ponder, Jake Locker type draft. I think
Last
it's better
question.
than that.
If there isn't, do you force it?
I'm really going to need to see guys like Sam Howell and Spencer Rattler play more this year. It's tough for me to say. If I'm not
convinced, then I'd have a chance to take Kayvon Thibodeau. I'm going to have a hard time arguing against it.
Exactly. It's kind of the argument that we had with Penei Sewell. It's hard not to take a guy of that type of talent and caliber at the spot in the draft, especially when you don't get the prize piece at the quarterback spot. So it's tough to say that you would rather force it. Now, I do still, have to ask the question of what do the Lions do at QB next season? Granted, they are still, I believe, are tied to Jared Goff for at least another year, probably 2. So
I think it's 2 years. Yeah, I think it's 2 years.
2 more years is.
Oh, I thought it was this year and next year.
I thought because of the restructuring of his contract, they added an extra year onto that.
They might have been.
I thought they did. Yeah. I could be wrong, but I thought it added another year on that timeline. So, but if this year isn't the year that you're able to get the guy you really want at the top of the draft, take a guy like Thibodeau and be happy about it, because you can come back again next year and in the draft find your guy, because you still won't be a good team. So you got a chance to. So the Lions actually have an opportunity here to build a team that I believe is the proper way to build things. Which it's a little bit riskier in the sense of if you miss in the quarterback, you're screwed, a la the Chicago Bears. But if you hit on the quarterback, you got a real chance to be a winner for a long time, a la the Kansas City Chiefs. And that is build the team and then get the quarterback. And then you have 5 years of a really good team and a quarterback on a rookie deal, which is the way to win in the NFL now is win while the quarterback is on a rookie deal.
Yeah.
So you have the Lions have that opportunity here to build this roster with the draft this upcoming year and free agency as well. Getting a guy like Thibodeau, bringing in some wide receivers in the draft as well, because you do have 2 first-round picks. You got to remember. And just building the roster around what is currently a hole at the QB position. But when you are ready, you can get that QB and slot him in, and he's got a team to win with right away.
Yeah.
May not be may not be year 1, but it very well could be and should be years 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the Lions are probably going that route. I don't hate it at all. I like it. Yes, it's a little bit riskier because you only got 1 shot to hit on the quarterback, because if you're like the Chicago Bears, you're not bad enough to be picking in the top to get another quarterback, but you're not good enough to win.
Yeah.
So, and that was what the Bears were dealing with Mitch Trubisky for, way too long. But if you get it right, the sky's the limit.
And then just to clarify, Jared Goff has a potential out. Well, the Lions have a potential out in 2023, but they would take a $10 million dead cap hit. Okay. He doesn't actually become a UFA until 25.
Right. I do. Is the out only for 23, or is it also after 24?
Only 23, it looks like.
Okay. So if Jared Goff hasn't proven himself by then, they're probably going to exercise that and just take the $10 million cap hit. And they can afford to do that because the guy that they'd be bringing in is a rookie and he's going to be on a cheap deal. It's a 1-year cap hit, so that's okay. So, I mean, the Lions could end up looking like, say they grab a Justin Herbert-like guy, and he's good beautiful. Right away.
That would be beautiful.
Well, if you've built the team around him, you've got a chance to win right away. Anything else to add before we close out?
That's all I got.
All right, that is going to call for this week, guys. Thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter at RealFanReport. Sorry we missed last week. I was out of town, so I was enjoying my time off from work, and we hope you guys. Yeah, it was nice. It was nice. But we hope you guys had a great Labor Day, and we hope you guys have a great Lions football weekend or just NFL football weekend. I know everybody's excited to have it back, especially. You get the Saturday college football to NFL Sunday. We miss those times for sure, and we're glad they're back. So we hope you guys enjoy it. Let us know if you're excited about the Lions this season. Thank you to you guys. Thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast. Andrew, thank you to you as well. We will catch you guys next week. This has been the Fan Reporters. Bye, fans.
For fans.
Have a good one, guys. Peace out.
Peace.